Um, Good to know. How all of that intersects is that one of the driving forces for me, folks, that I've always been searching for various ways to bring uplift to our communities that are struggling. And so I do that from the pulpit. I've done that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and now I'm fortunate to do that at the State House. But it's still the same guy with the same message, with the same cause.
Well, I guess I got into this work, specifically housing justice, through a pretty winding road. As Alicia mentioned, I was a journalist in a past life. I think about 8 years covering news out of Charleston, and through that, I just came into contact with a lot of systems in our state that are fundamentally unjust, fundamentally broken. I was on the education beat, so I saw a lot of the inequity by design in our state. But along the way, I also had the chance to learn a lot about housing rights and the lack thereof in our state. And in this job at the ACLU, a lot of y'all know the name. You know, it's not a religious organization at all. You know, we represent the rights of people of all faiths and no faith at all. However, if I can take off my ACLU badge for a minute. I'm not going to because I got it just right. Speaking as myself, as a South Carolinian, I found myself in this work because of my faith and where it led me. Finished reading the Bible cover to cover for the first time in my 20s, and I took forever to do it. I wasn't on a 1-year plan. It was a lot of digressions. I was not very studious about it, but I made it through. And one of the undeniable themes throughout was that where people are suffering, where they don't have a home, and who are sick and hungry, that is where God is.
Our charge, look out for the least of these.
Yeah. So that's part of why I do this.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we came here today to talk about housing justice, how we can pursue it through our faith communities, through our work outside the faith community. I guess we should stick to the questions. Alicia gave us an outline so we don't ramble too much. I guess we could start by just talking about a statement of the problem. So I'll let you go first. What is the problem, or what are the problems that you see regarding housing in this state?
Well, everybody's quick to tell how blessed we are, and we are blessed in terms of how our state's growing. But we're having growing pains too. That's truly affecting the people who have been here forever, who have actually helped to build the state. And we got to make sure we don't exclude them from these conversations. And it's showing up first and foremost in housing. I think you heard Alicia say in her opening that we're over 20,000 units short of affordable housing. That is incredible, folks. And that number is growing. It's not a stagnant number. It is constantly growing. And it has far-reaching implications, not just for those folks who feel it every day, as you heard in the quotations from the book, but this problem has ripple effects, and it's going to affect all of us. It may get to you slower than most, but it's coming to you because it has a drag on our economy. It has a drag on our ability to market our state as a place to invest in for companies to move in. And so it's something that we have to address immediately. And when we say affordability or income-based housing, we have to take in consideration the income levels of our people. As anybody that's lived in Greenville for a while, you and especially if you're in the market trying to find some place to live, you've had some sticker shock, am I right? You know, 1 bedroom, 800 square foot apartment, $1,500, $1,600 a month. That's wild. That's more than my mortgage.
Yeah.
My daughter's apartment is more expensive than my house. And so that's affecting a lot of people. And we all know the normal rule calls that, you should try to get around about 30% of your household income. We've got so many people that are living at 50, and I've heard in some cases 70% of their monthly income goes toward housing. So what are they missing out on? quality food, supplies for their kids. They're missing out on some of the essentials of life just to maintain a roof, and that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, that 30% figure, that's something I was taught growing up.
Absolutely.
And it's meaningful from a statistical perspective. Like, people who look at housing systems refer to anyone who spends more than 30% of their household income on rent as rent burden.
Yeah.
And statewide, that's half of South Carolina's.
Oh, absolutely.
50%.
Rent and utilities.
Mhm.
And so many folks are, they far exceed.
Yeah. I guess my statement of the problem here begins specifically with the issue of eviction.
Yes.
So at the ACLU of South Carolina, our three big pushes, our agenda, we'll spell it out right now, is juvenile justice reform, voting rights and ending gerrymandering, and housing justice. And going along with housing justice, eviction prevention. So I'm from North Charleston, and we had a pretty rude awakening just a few years ago. I think it was 2019. There was a nationwide report on rates of eviction that it was focused at the time on cities and metro areas. And among cities, North Charleston was the #1 city in the United States for rate of evictions filed. That's where I live. That's where my neighbors are struggling to make rent. And all of a sudden, everybody was scrambling to figure out why. Like, we knew it was bad, but we didn't know the scale. We didn't know that North Charleston in particular was in such a rough spot. And there are a lot of reasons that will take a lot of solutions. I mean, gentrification is an unavoidable part of the reason. Charleston County in general has borne witness to that and not done a good job reckoning with it yet. But then there are systemic issues related to the eviction process that we need to address. So North Charleston, as I mentioned, had a really rude awakening, but things have shifted. ACLU of South Carolina commissioned a report last year that found that North Charleston is no longer the #1 metro area in the state for evictions. It's Columbia, followed by Greenville. Which is not to say that North Charleston isn't a good place yet, but all of these major metro areas are suffering. People are suffering. People are losing their homes. And
hey, Paul, can we put some numbers out there just to kind of give everybody some context? When the sirens went off for Charleston was about 16%. 16 people per every 100 people were getting evicted in Charleston. So everybody was up in arms. I saw a report recently as of January that Greenville is at 24. 24. So think about that. 24 people out of 100 are facing eviction. And so 16 percent in Charleston made everybody circle the wagons. Yeah. We're at 24.
Yeah, that, geographically, we see where this is hitting the hardest, but also we need to bear in mind the demographics. That eviction nationwide and in South Carolina disproportionately affects women, in particular Black and Latino women. Yeah. It disproportionately affects families with children, especially single parents. And if we are serious as a community and as a state about protecting children, one of the more traumatic things in a child's life is losing their home.
Well, the stability, the lack of stability. Right. It's hard to study when you don't know where you're going to live.
Definitely. Yeah. Another stat, this is statewide data from about 2 years ago. Department of Education reported there were 12,000 homeless students enrolled in South Carolina schools. Those are just the ones we know about.
Right. Not
everybody's going to come forward and talk to their guidance counselor about it. So this is something that's affecting children here and now. Now, I guess we can segue into the next topic, which is anything that you've learned about housing systems and housing justice that you found surprising or that caught you off guard.
Well, I think the thing that catches me off guard the most, guys, is it's not prioritized.
Mhm.
I mean, this is a real problem, and the numbers say so. The national average is like 8%,
Mm.
8% eviction rate for nationally,
Mhm.
and we're at 24. To me, that merits it to move up the pecking order.
Mhm.
And so we've got to figure this out. We got to figure it out fast. I'm grateful that several of the local municipalities, including Greenville, are now starting to try to take the reins themselves. And they're not going to wait for Columbia to try to figure this out. And so the main issue, as with anything legislatively, is trying to figure out how to pay for it.
Mhm.
And so that's where the back and forth is going right now. And there have been a couple of things that have been thrown around to try to figure out how to do this. But again, we find ways to pay for other things that really aren't that alarming for our state as this is. And so again, I always tell people, I say, priorities are dictated by the budget. Look at the budget, see where the money's going. And we've got to figure out, we need your help to figure that out. We need your advocacy to make sure that legislators are also as alarmed by this as we all should be. Because again, this is slowly but surely crippling our economy. And we're all going to suffer for it sooner or later.
Yeah.
Is this Greenville City or Greenville County we're talking about, the 24%? I see, when you talk to.
Good to see you. What I read actually again this morning is about this Greenville County. Yeah, and as you can imagine, throughout the state, those numbers normally spike in the rural areas. Well, no, I'll take that back. No, it's starting to mesh out because again, the expense is in the city area, metropolitan areas, but the rural areas also suffer from an employment issue, and so that's what's hurting their ability to maintain their homes too. So this issue is not a Black issue, it's not a Hispanic issue, it's a South Carolinian issue. This is going through every group of people. And so we need to really bring this to the forefront of our agendas.
Yeah.
Can I ask both of you to speak a little louder, particularly Paul? And
Sure. Definitely, I'll speak up. I was struck by the same thing that you mentioned, just the lack of urgency.
Yeah.
That among people in power, this is not treated as any kind of emergency.
Right.
But it goes back to what at least Alicia said in the reading, that things that seem like small stuff to a person with some degree of comfort, these things are not small to people caught in the midst of people facing eviction. This is a crisis right now.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the problems, Paul, too, is it's touching the lives of people who really, in many cases, don't know how to advocate for themselves.
Right.
And so the persons who have the money, the lobbyists, and what have you to advocate for their needs, they're gonna move to the top of the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
But as we both stated, the numbers are screaming at us,
Mhm.
and so we need to prioritize this.
I can share a few surprising things I've learned. You mentioned this is an issue in rural areas too.
Yeah.
And I think some of the initial reporting focused on metro areas, but if you're looking at per capita eviction filing rates, places like Cherokee County are through the roof right now. Rural parts of our state, Dillon County recently was leading the state in monthly eviction filings. These are not the big cities. This is something that's affecting everybody. I've also learned a few things about the way the deck is stacked in court when it comes to housing. When you're a renter, one issue at hand here in South Carolina, if as a landlord you are seeking to evict someone, you have to pay a filing fee with the court. It's $40, which is among the cheapest in the country. And as a result of that, we find that landlords are using the threat of eviction as a first resort to collect rent that's past due, rather than a last resort. And we also, because of that, are one of the leading states in the country for what are called serial evictions, where a landlord will file evictions against the same tenant over and over again when they're 5 days late on their rent. And it's a burden on the court system. It's a burden on the rent payer. It's not among other things, it's not an efficient way to provide housing, and
It's bullying.
it is,
It's
yeah.
bullying.
And it's right, if you've ever had an eviction notice taped to your door, that's terrifying, and it's
Embarrassing, it's a host of things.
and people don't know their rights, as you said. You know, the eviction notice will usually say something to the effect that you have 10 days to file a written response. It's not, you don't get a court date right away. You have to file something in a court responding, which I'm not a lawyer. I would be in way over my head trying to file a legal response during a moment of personal crisis.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul. Aren't those evictions attached to that record?
They are, right.
The
And
moment
that's
they are filed,
right.
it is attached to the individual's record.
Mhm.
And now that record follows them when they're trying to find another form of housing.
Yeah.
And it could be from a landlord just trying to apply pressure, just being a serial
Mhm.
eviction file.
Yeah, it sticks with you, especially at, I've talked to folks who are just trying to get an apartment in a big apartment complex. And a lot of the larger management companies are automatically screening. They're checking the public index of court records. And if you have an eviction or an eviction notice on your record in the last 5 years, you're locked out automatically. So yeah, not only have you lost one home, now it is a much greater struggle to find a place that will just take your money,
Right.
give you a home.
Right.
So even if the eviction wasn't completed, the eviction notice itself is attached to the person's record.
Yes.
We've started talking about this, but are there any other ways that you'd like to highlight that the housing crisis affects the community at large, economically, or just in terms of impact on the community beyond the family facing eviction?
Oh, absolutely, guys. There is an economic cost we pay, especially when you have ample evictions. And first of all, it's a terrible stigma that gets attached to your city, your state, from folks on the outside trying to decide they want to come here, from CEOs trying to decide if they want to move their employees to the state, and they start looking at information to bring and realize that every 24 out of 100 people are being evicted. It causes them to ask some needed questions and to be concerned about it. It begins to pull down the values of houses around those particular houses when those houses become repetitively empty. And so it depresses the value of real estate, which ultimately depresses what we can assess from a tax standpoint. There's a constant ripple effect of this. It's not just to that family, it's touching all of us. One of the things I since I'm a pastor, I guess I can say that I'm preaching is that, guys, we really are in this together. We really, even though you may be doing well and you're able to handle your mortgage, able to handle your rent, the folks around you are struggling. And so they are impacting the quality of life, the economy that we all are counting on to be healthy and to do well. And so we have to include everybody in these conversations and try to come up with some solutions. And those of you who are doing well, we need you to apply some pressure on folks like me in Columbia to make sure that we prioritize this issue.
Well, we're getting a 5-minute warning.
I saw that.
Let's pitch our solutions. Let's get on the soapbox real quick. You want to go first with your bill?
Well, I'll tell you guys about my bill. My bill is called the Religious Institutions Housing Act, Affordable Housing Act. The ultimate goal of this bill for me is speed. So I'm gonna state it up front, speed, because we do have a units issue. We need 22,000 or more units. So what I have proposed is that we allow religious institutions, many of which we have ample land surrounding their facility, and they also, many of them are waving their hands saying, we want to be a part of the solution. And so what I'm suggesting is that we allow religious institutions to partner with developers to build affordable housing on their property. And by doing so, that affordable housing still remains tax exempt, because the property is now tax exempt. And so oftentimes people ask me, Paul, why can't the religious institutions go ahead and just do that on their own now? Mm-hmm. Number one reason they can't is they don't have the expertise to do it. Number two is that if they begin to build multifamily property on their own, it's not guaranteed that it will remain tax exempt. Their properties now are given a tax exempt status because the religious institution can say this property is here for religious purposes. But when you start building multifamily housing, you can't say that. And so what I'm proposing is that the new entity that's formed with the partnership of the church and the developer, the church has to maintain a minimum of 10% ownership of that new property, and it still remains tax exempt. So that's the incentive to get developers to even consider it. Because one of the issues that we have as a growing state, developers have ample projects that they can do and not even consider affordable housing. And to become an affordable housing builder, you got to jump through countless hoops and qualify for tax credits and things of that sort. That takes time. Time is our enemy right now. We need speed. And so this bill proposes that we allow people to begin to move now, move some dirt now. And so I'm hoping that my colleagues down there will jump on board. It's getting a lot of traction, but hey, make a phone call for me. See if we can get some more people to pay attention to it.
Say that bill number again.
It is 4544, House Bill 4544.
The bill that I'm here to talk about is House Bill 3844. This is guaranteeing eviction right to counsel. So in the same way that if you've watched any police or court TV show, you've heard you have the right to an attorney, right? This is the case in criminal cases. When you're facing criminal charges, if you can't afford legal representation, the state will provide that for you. We think that right should be extended to tenants facing eviction. We wouldn't be the first state to do it. It's been tried in other cities, counties, and states across the country. And the upshot every time is that it keeps people in their homes. And it can, on the flip side, ensure that landlords get their back rent. Rather than just chase someone out of their property, they actually get the money they're owed, and people are able to find mutually beneficial solutions. So again, the bill is 3844 in the South Carolina House. I printed off a few QR codes on these tables here. It'll take you to a page where you can write to your state House representative and ask them to co-sponsor this, because this bill has been reintroduced a few times. Representative Pendarvis from my district in the Low Country, he's been championing this for years, and he's picked up a few co-sponsors, including Representative Jones. We need more. We need co-sponsors from across the state, across the political spectrum. So yeah, you writing as a constituent to your lawmaker makes a much bigger difference than a stranger from another part of the state writing it. So
let's make sure they know this model has been proven to be successful. This is what they're doing currently in Charleston, where the Supreme Court stepped in and said, we've got to have this down here in Charleston. When Charleston was at 16%, and it's worked well. And I think in terms of the outcomes have been staggering. I think 90+% of these deals have resulted in removal of the eviction, stopping the eviction process,
right,
as well as the landlords getting paid. So don't buy into the whole notion that somebody's losing. No, this works where everybody gets taken care of. The court steps in as a mediator to resolve this, and most people come out of this with everybody feeling like they came out of a winner in this deal.
Yeah, again, it'll take a lot of solutions, but at the ACLU, we want to make sure everybody has a fair shake in the court at the very least.
Absolutely. All right, I think we're out of time.
We have one question from our Zoom audience. When did you pre-file your House bill? This question.
That was filed this November.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's sitting in either LCI, House Ways and Means. I can't remember which committee on the top of my head.
3844 was pre-filed, I want to say November, December 2022. So the legislature operates on a 2-year-long session. So it remains active through the end of this year's legislative session. After which, they may have to reintroduce it, but we're gonna keep hammering on this until it picks up steam.
All right. Well, this time we're going to thank our online audience, and we're going to open up for questions.
Several years ago in Greenville, we established a mental health court so that people